On this episode of the show, I have with me Rohan Kodialam. He is co-founder and CEO at Sphinx. So we're going to be talking about, well, data. We're going to talk about how business should be driving those conversations around data, and obviously a lot of engineering within data. And we'll talk about some of the differentiation between data and software engineering. And, there is some underlying pieces that have to be in place. And we're going to talk about how AI can actually help data deliver and what does success look like in the data space. Rohan, I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Amir.
Absolutely. All right, before we dive in, tell us all what Sphinx does.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sphinx is building state-of-the-art AI agents for data science. And specifically, we see data as its own modality, a modality that, similar to how text and images are kind of the lifeblood of day-to-day conversation among people, data as the lifeblood of a business, tabular data, time series data, semi-structured information. We build agents that can natively think about that data and help data teams and enterprises go from that raw information to insights and value that they can use to drive increased value.
Absolutely. And I guess we could start, we all understand the role of data. I guess within the context of this conversation, there is certain complexities around data that necessarily don't sit within other disciplines. And maybe we could start there. Like when we're looking at data or look at delivering data, what are some of the challenges that you see compared to the software engineering teams delivering or other technology pillars delivering?
Yeah, so we see data as fundamentally a mode that most AI models are not good at understanding, and likewise, most humans are not good at understanding. So when you think about data, you kind of envision it as, let's say, tabular information sitting in a database. You have your rows and your columns, and then values sitting in these rows and columns. The transformer-based approach that's worked so well for text doesn't really scale in a very natural way to data, right? So we see this as the biggest challenge, the biggest difference. Data has structure that's usually quite complicated and quite bespoke. Every single table may have its own structure that needs to be learned and exploited in order to pull value out of that. What we see on the other hand with, say, a software copilot or with your standard kind of chat GPT style chatbots is that the domain they operate in is language, whether natural language or artificial language, like say Python. In those domains, you do get all of the kind of benefits of an autoregressive model that allow you to generate that content quite well and to run inference on that content, bring it in as context. The problem with data is you can't really treat it natively that way. By analogy, I would say if you as a human had to read a book or had to read a code base, you could go and read that book or the code base page by page and build some understanding. And if you were sufficiently smart, like a very intelligent frontier model, you could understand it. On the flip side, if I gave you some data, let's say some stock ticker data, and I printed it out on 1,000 Excel sheets for you, just a bunch of numbers on Excel sheets, and I said, here's the data, what do you think of the trend in this data? I mean, obviously, it would be horrible for you to flip through those pages, and that's effectively what a lot of AI is doing. For humans, we've spent the last 200 years inventing data visualization techniques, data interpretation techniques, and someone needs to build that same layer for AI, right? So AI can then see data in a way that allows it to comprehend it and then make decisions based on it. That's effectively what Sphinx is building.
Absolutely. When we look at the data space and we talk about obviously trying to get to insights, I mean, traditionally there's a pretty decent lag. I mean, depending on the size of the project, obviously, but there is a lag from when business needs some type of insights, whatever that could be, to it being delivered. I don't know if we talk about that lag enough in its impact. Obviously, we don't probably talk about it because there's not much we could do, right? Currently, there's a lag because it takes us time to do the things we need to do to produce insights. But that impact, that lag, the impact on business, is it just not discussed enough? Is it something that we discount in the conversation of making a business impact?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think that to some degree, without tools like Sphinx, there's not much you can do about it. So, I mean, you can't cry over spilt milk, and building that lag as part of your process and saying, okay, when we need a new insight, it takes 3 days is something a lot of businesses just accept. And we certainly see it as transformative to remove that. On the other hand, I think a more kind of a deep-seated cultural issue that comes up here is that ad hoc is seen as almost like a bad word in a lot of enterprises, right? Like people are focused on things like dashboards and business intelligence. And the idea here is like if you kind of pre-compute all the different things that someone is going to ask and you build a dashboard that deals with all of them, then when someone asks a question, you can kind of almost have a cache hit and have the answer ready to go. And then you don't spend 3 days or 4 days or a week building that new analysis. I think what that leads to is almost over engineering in some cases. We've talked to several executives who have said, yeah, there are 3 or 4 dashboards at my company that I look at regularly, like something for revenue, something for cost, and then there's probably 100 dashboards that we ask for something to be put together, and they make a dashboard for it. We look at the dashboard once, maybe twice, and then we're done, right? Because that acute issue has been resolved. The dashboard helped; it gave us the insight. We made a decision, and now it's just kind of sitting there somewhere in Tableau, and like, who cares about it, right? So part of the cultural shift that we hope to bring about is make ad hoc no longer a bad word, right? In the end of the day, if your business is doing something interesting, you will have distinct, unique issues that come up every day, every week, every quarter, and you need to be able to respond to them quickly. And having an AI-powered data team will let you, instead of taking a week to kind of get an insight you need, get it in a couple of minutes, right? And then you're ready to go. And you don't really, and while you do have the ability to put it in production if it is valuable, that's not necessarily the only thing you may want to do. You may actually just need that insight at this time. So by shortening that timeline, it's not just that you can be more efficient in the way you already are, you're doing the same thing but faster, but you can actually have a bit of a paradigm shift in how you think about data and how you think about the cost, kind of fixed cost of saying, I need to find something new in my data rather than just relying on the kind of tools you already have and hoping they solve your problem.
Absolutely. Let's actually, I want to talk about, when we're looking at AI solutions for data, I think obviously when we're looking at AI code generating tools for, and I use that term because I'm afraid at some point the name will change, so I try to genericize it. But when we're looking at tools that help developers, engineers write code, there's a lot out there. Like you see a lot. When it comes to data, are we going to see? I mean, I am seeing, but are we going to see a continued growth and adoption of these type of tools in data, or is the nature of data a little bit different? Obviously, I know you guys have a product that kind of deals with this, but just the nature of data, the way it works, where does an AI tool that's helping generate insights, where does it sit? Where does it bring the benefit for data teams?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think obviously you're seeing us, so we are building this. And there are a few big differences that kind of shape how the market, I think, is going to evolve. One is that I think vibe data science is a little bit less appealing than vibe coding. Most people don't have enterprise scale data sitting at home. So the value to them of a tool that helps you uncover value in that type of data is relatively low. And the other aspect here is that security is a must, right? I think there is a bit of a wild west with coding assistants in that dev tools were seen as harmless little things, and now of course you may think twice that your dev tool is reading your entire code base and doing something with it and training a model. But with data, both because dev tools have already existed for a couple of years and because data has always been seen as a crown jewel of an enterprise, it's not like people don't mess around with that. You do need to build a product that, and we are building a product that stays to the highest levels of security, highest levels of interpretability, highest levels of allowing enterprises to have control over something that's quite valuable to them. So with those two constraints, I think the realm of just kind of like off the shelf, like fun little tools that help you write code, that's probably not going to exist in data. And it is going to have to be a little bit more enterprise focused. And that's exactly what we're doing. And it's what we're seeing others in the space doing. How it affects data teams is I think it starts in a couple of phases, right? The first phase is just a speed up. And it's simple as that, right? These are highly paid, intelligent people doing very high quality work. And there's usually not enough of them, right? If you go and look at like how when Harvard Business School talks to executives about data, you'll find things like 90% of them, of executives think that data is super important, one of our top priorities, but then only like 10, 20% of them are actually investing in their data team. So the clear thing is these are people with a lot of work on their plate. It's a lot of valuable work. And the more that you can accelerate them, if they can work with Sphinx 5 times faster, 10 times faster, they can deliver a lot more value. And we're still very much in that like unsaturated phase where just doing more data science just delivers more value. We're not like at this kind of plateau where that extra, 30 hours of work is not going to yield anything. Where we see that getting more and more transformative is as our models get better and as we integrate deeper into certain enterprises, you can start to actually evolve from copilot to autopilot, right? And then you can have, and some of our users are actually already using, like an autonomous data scientist effectively, where you can have easier tasks, and then of course increasingly harder tasks just get delegated to the AI, allowing the data team, the human data team, to focus on domain knowledge. And we see that as the real big differentiator as well between what we're building and what we think is like slightly too verticalized solutions. With sufficiently good design of agents, you can get a very nice orthogonalization between statistics, coding, data science on one side, and the business context on the other. We don't know people's business, right? Like I'm not going to go to a customer and say, I know your business better than you. That like they obviously do it better than me. And they can bring that domain knowledge and say, what are the cogent questions? What are the questions that if answered, I could really, improve my margins. I could use to improve my supply chains. I could use to just be more profitable overall. They can bring those questions, and then the agents can delegate the rest of the work in order to help them get to answers faster. So we see it as transformative initially as an efficiency gain, but then over honestly not too long of a horizon to a paradigm shift where you are able to answer questions that define your business very quickly, very accurately, very repeatably.
Absolutely. I guess let's dive in a little bit more there, because I think if data people are listening to this one specifically, and I'm sitting there, I've been in the data space, and I'm typically going through the process of producing. Don't need to document that on this. We know what that is. Where does a tool like yours, or we can even talk about it generically, but give us some examples of Sphinx. Where does the tool give us the lift, and what are there problems it can tackle easier? And the reason I'm asking, and I'll give you the context, is I'm assuming a product that sits on top of data context, as you mentioned, is massive. I mean, that could be a significant, even from team to team. Mm-hmm. They might have different views of data in the context of data. I guess, can you help us understand that a little?
Yeah. And look, like my background is I was a quant. I ran a quant team at Citadel for several years. So I'm basically a data scientist, right? Like, and that's part of why we built this. Like, we saw no solution that solved it for us. And so the real place where we slot in is not in thinking of ideas for you in that sense, right? If you have an inductive bias, part of our mission and part of, I think, any competent assistant, right, Copilot product should be to take your inductive bias and capture it as quickly as possible and then impose it on everything it does, right? So we're not going to tell you what the right way to think about your data is. If you have an insight that's not just statistically obvious, you should be pumping that in. And if you're differentiated from your coworker who has a different insight, then whoever has a better insight, regardless of Copilots, is going to come up with better outputs. What we help with is getting the job done, right? So that's everything from data discovery to EDA, data cleaning, figuring out how to merge multiple different disparate data sources into single views, taking those views and finding features in them, feature engineering, of course, modeling, and I'll revisit modeling in a second. I think it's one of the less interesting parts of the pipeline, but we can do it. And then once the modeling is done, interpretation of results, and finally tying it all back into some kind of business conclusion, right? At the end of the day, most of the point of data science is that when you're done, you have an idea, you have a conclusion that you either present once or try to turn into a pipeline, and Sphinx helps with that as well. Modeling, I think, is the least interesting part because, and we've seen a lot of people focus on it, I think mistakenly, in that once you have your clean X's and your clean Y's and you just want to predict it, you just call sklearn, make a neural network, whatever. Like that's all kind of the easy part. The hard part is getting the data into a state where you're actually confident enough to say, I want to build a model. And so we focus on that. And then the other hard part is what comes after. You've built a model. Okay, so what? What's the point of this? And we focus on that as well. What we don't focus on is, what is the question, right? If you need to tell us the question, you need to say, I need a model that helps me understand why are my customers churning, right? That's quite a common one. Or I need you to help me build a data pipeline that takes data from this place where it is now and gets it ready for this type of work that I'd like to do in the future, right? And you give us inputs like that, we will do the work of making that happen.
So I guess when I asked early on about, time to delivering a solution to the business. Typically, things take time. Everything you just described takes time. Mm-hmm. When you're looking at a solution such as yours or similar solutions where we're accelerating the solution, that we can deliver. Obviously, we still have to be cognizant of all the same issues, complexities, user acceptance, adoption, all those things. If we're speeding up the delivery time, I guess what is the down, field impact on delivery? Because obviously there's various amounts of things that have to happen that still might take similar time, but obviously, Sphinx is, let's say in this example, accelerating certain parts. What happens to delivery, and where is it that the human, I don't know if I want to use the word bottleneck, but where is it the human jumps back in and takes over from a solution?
So we believe that the right place for the human to jump in is the business decision, right? Like at the end of the day, like look, that may change as models get even better, but right now, like if you were to use Sphinx, Sphinx can get you all the way to what are the options that you can make from a business decision perspective. What are their pros? What are their cons? How are they statistically justified? And then someone needs to actually make the call, right? At the end of the day, that's probably going to be a human. It's very unlikely that an AI is running a business today. That I don't see as a bottleneck. I see that as the natural step of review of the AI outputs to make sure that they make sense, and a chance for the human to ensure that if they have any follow-ups or any kind of modifications they want to make to the analysis, they have the opportunity to do so. But that bottleneck is so small compared to what we see as the full pipeline today, right? We're literally cutting the time to completion by 20x, 40x, 50x here, right? That we don't really see it as an issue. We see it almost as a good thing that there is some human control on the model. It allows us to make sure that there is a second pair of eyes on it. And from our perspective, we optimize for that bottleneck, right? We make everything we do fully interpretable. We actually make sure that all the processes we run on our customer side, right? Both from a privacy perspective, so we're not like owning their code or owning their data, but also from an auditability perspective. They can go look at it, they can rerun it, they can completely own that pipeline in its entirety. And we think that bottleneck is then enabled by that, right? I don't even want to call it a bottleneck. It's like a decision point. The decision point allows the humans to then use the output of AI to make a decision in their business that hopefully increases value.
Absolutely. I guess when you're looking at, defining success for the AI tool itself, right?
Yes.
I guess success in delivery business, that's a different question. What if you're a user, if you're sitting in the enterprise and you're using the tool, how does that success look, or what does it look, or how do you judge success when you're getting a solution from something like a Sphinx?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think at the end of the day, there are two stakeholders we have, right? One is the leadership of the firm, and the second are the actual users. And we want to make sure both of them are incredibly happy with our product. So when you think about like leadership, you think about a chief data officer or someone like that, often their goal is number one, efficiency, time saved, and that is pretty easy to measure. Just make sure we're writing a lot of code for you, saving a lot of time. And number two is, of course, accuracy, right? In the sense that even though there is human review, we want the model to have very few corrections. We don't want it to be like the human has to sit there like correcting every model behavior. So that's, again, reasonably easy for us to measure. We just see that people are not introspecting on the model and saying, oh, actually change this, or pausing it or otherwise interrupting it, right? The model usually runs to completion, gives an answer, the user accepts it. So that's the high level. And then that, of course, flows into the business impact in various ways. Is it able to complete certain projects for them? Is it able to overall increase the velocity of how data science reaches business impact? And that all, I think that all kind of discussed earlier. With the users, right? Obviously, efficiency is a big one because you don't want to do a lot of this work. But the efficiency is now like somewhat non-linearly weighted. There's a lot of work that data scientists don't mind doing. I think modeling is a good example of this. It's like not that hard. It's something where you can express a little bit of creativity with your inductive biases. And there is work that data scientists don't really need to do. And this is work that I call almost boilerplate. So an example of this could be I have two different time series and I want to join them together. Okay, like they use different date formats. They have different frequencies. One of them is like missing values in a certain range. Like doing all this nonsense to get these things to intermesh so that you can go do some downstream analysis with it. It's not actually that related to the business point of what you're doing. It does have to be done very carefully. You can't actually do it with boilerplate code because you need to have close understanding of the data to do it right. And if someone just does that for you, it makes your life a lot easier. So at the end of the day, while we do care a lot about time saved, we want to weight it by user happiness, right? We want a product that every data scientist is delighted to use, that takes the things they don't want to do off their plate and gives them back focus to allow them to think about inductive biases, how to have impact. What are the questions that are worth asking, right? So it's a non-linear kind of transformation on efficiency that I think matters the most to our users.
Interesting. I guess when you're looking at the business, I guess business driving the discussion, business driving and making those requirements clear and known. I guess on the flip side, they've been very used to having to think in a very maybe linear fashion that, hey, we have this problem, let's give it to you, here's the definition, and we go wait for 1 month to 12 or in between, and then you come back with a solution. Now, at that time, that solution might or might not be as relevant as when the problem is identified.
And likely not, right?
And likely not. I mean, that's that going back to the lag that I think, if you have a software feature, typically that lag is already incorporated in a roadmap or it can be, it's different than data. Not that it's easier or better or worse or whatever, but it's different. If we're giving them the power to start actually defining these requirements, I am actually wondering if we're going to see different ways of thinking of requirements from them.
Absolutely, right. And the way I think we can see this is there are certain industries where there has been aggressive enough investment in data and data science that you don't really have that lag. And the easiest one for me to think about, of course, is the hedge fund industry. And if you think of one of the larger hedge funds like Citadel, where I was, there were thousands of quants, right? And the idea here is now, if you have all this top talent, all this top data science talent in one house, and you can answer questions really quickly, I mean, you can see what people can do. They can make billions of dollars on the markets, right? Because when a market situation emerges, it's analyzed immediately. We understand what to do, and then we go and execute on it. Most businesses can't afford or don't believe in data to the degree where they're going to go and hire thousands of highly paid people to sit there and think about data full time, right? But what Sphinx unlocks is for any business to think about their data to the degree that, say, a hedge fund or another kind of high-powered data house would be able to do. And that's exactly the pattern we're seeing. Obviously, like a lot of our initial users are coming from places where data is already well known as an important asset. So they have a data team. The data team's doing a lot of great work. They want more of it. So they're like, okay, Sphinx can help us. Great. But there's an increasing group of people working with us where they have a tiny data team, like 2 or 3 people. And they're like, well, I think this is valuable. Like I've seen data work in other companies. I've seen it work in like finance. Maybe it'll work for me. And they're in like manufacturing or something completely random. And then we are able to help them kind of achieve that massive scale data impact, because now they're able to answer questions immediately. They're able to deliver on projects a lot faster. Things like data migrations, which are like, oh man, this is horrible. I need to budget like a quarter for it. They just tell Sphinx to do it. It does it like they can do it together in like a couple of days, a week, right? And so we already know what it looks like when you can fully monetize your data, right? We see the huge impact of that in the financial industry. What we also see is obviously a massive cost, right? These are like, it's an expensive thing to do it, but we know what that state looks like. And if we can get to that end state cheaply and empower small data teams to punch way above their weight, we see that as massively transformative. And that's really like the end goal of Sphinx. It's not to say like you already have a big data team or making you 100% faster. It's to say you have data and now you can believe in turning that data into value, right? That's really like what we think we can deliver.
I like that a lot. I do think it's going to be interesting as more and more solutions hit and they become easier and easier. I think the discussions around impacting the software development lifecycle is real. I think talking about, in this case, AI impacting the data science lifecycle and where it accelerates, I think that's definitely going to be interesting. And maybe last question, like when we're looking at the evolution, this is obviously, you're building this. We're going to ask you to put your, future forward goggles on for a second. Obviously, lots of promise around everything. That's the technology hype cycle. This one seems like it's not hype. It's just early, and it's going to take a while. What do you kind of envision, like, for the data space, AI tools that will help drive more insights for the stakeholder, whatever that shape or form of the insight is it something that's going to happen really quick? Are we still talking a couple of years off or something in between?
No, I mean, I think we're already there. At the end of the day, like AI applications, I think have been a little bit disappointing to some degree. the ones that have been most successful have been software copilots. And there's a natural reason for that, in that the people building them are software engineers, so they know the problems, and therefore their design is somewhat good by default. My team is a lot of data scientists, a lot of quants. Like, we have that background, and we have been realizing increasingly that you can build great tools right now, right? So we think this is going to be a fast accelerating space. We don't think it's going to be as hype as like video models or something, where like you can have something cool that the general public can interact with, right? At the end of the day, again, like, people don't have enterprise data at home. But it is certainly something that we're seeing enterprises increasingly get excited about. And it's something that we think is going to accelerate very, very, very quickly. The counterpoint to that is that data science is incredibly quality sensitive. Bad data science is less than worthless. It's actively a gigantic waste of everyone's time, or even worse, you're going to go make bad business decisions, right? So the quality bar is high, but we think we can meet it already, and we are meeting it with several of our existing customers, right? And that bar is only going to go up as AI solutions get better and better, right? So it's a mix, right? You're not just going to have a bunch of random entrants; they are going to be all serious companies. But this is a space that's ripe for development right now. Models are good enough to support a ton of advancement here.
Absolutely. Awesome, man. I'm sure there'll be some questions maybe. If somebody does have one and they want to ask you something about, Sphinx, AI in the data space, what's a good way of touching base with you?
Yeah, no, so, we're very active on X, I'm Kodialam Row, and on LinkedIn as well. You can find us. Our company's called Sphinx AI. We're very happy to answer your questions. We always love to get questions, especially from the data community, because we're building for you. And feel free to reach out to us.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for the time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Samir. Good meeting you.
Absolutely. All right, that's it for this episode. Be back again, different guest, different topic. Until then, two things. One, we talked a lot about, well, obviously, data in the, with AI on top of it is the dream. Sphinx is doing it, and we got some insights in terms of how within the data science space. We talked about that lag between business requirements and getting something into the hands of the users, and obviously an AI can potentially help accelerate that. And there's parts of that where Rohan walked us through. I thought that was great. So share this with somebody else who might benefit, someone in the data space, someone in the enterprise data space. I'm sure they would enjoy the conversation. Also, like, subscribe, comment. Let me know how the show's going for you. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.